Okay, Smalls, because this is something that had to happen. Like, and we had this conversation beforehand. I get accused of always wanting to fire people.
Yes.
I don't. I just want to have conversations about their job safety. And
Their security, yes.
Their security, like that's happening. No, but it had to. Like, there was also reports, I know earlier this week, that, like, Hubert really didn't even want the job. He was handpicked by Roy, so he felt like he had to take the job. And they need something different, and we'll get into that whole conversation of, where does the program turn to next?
Why do you like doing this to him?
Because he's our North Carolina fan. If this was the Wisconsin head coach, I would go to you. If it was Indiana, I would go to Courtney.
Right, we're hosts
if it was
on the
Illinois,
show. You like putting him in a spot where he's not ready to talk.
He was ready.
I know he's not thinking about what my takes are.
He doesn't need to take. It's just his opinion on his coach and his school. And he is not only our resident North Carolina fan, Nuno is our college basketball expert. So he, of course, was well-versed on this for a multitude of reasons, and I did not surprise him by going to him. I just wanted to get a temperature check from the person on this show who this matters to the most.
Okay. Oh, God, the earth is falling.
Well, it may be in Chapel Hill. Let's hear from Pete Thamel, ESPN College Sports Insider. It was on game night last night on ESPN Radio, beginning at 10 p.m. Eastern every single night with our guy Q Myers, and what led to the firing of Hubert Davis.
What led to it was a week of meetings after their loss Thursday. The team got back to Chapel Hill on Friday. Current athletic director Bubba Cunningham met with Davis. There was an administrative meeting on Sunday, and they told Hubert Davis they needed to know what changes he wanted in the program. They met and talked about those changes on Monday, and after evaluating that plan, the UNC Chancellor, Lee Roberts, Bubba Cunningham, and incoming athletic director Steve Newmark, who has been there this season, made a recommendation for a change. And ultimately, that ended up being a firing of Hubert Davis.
Okay, so before we get to what's next, because there's a lot of layers to this, Smalls and Court, did they make the right move here?
Well, Evan, Hubert Davis was 2-2 in the round of 64 as the head coach of UNC, and they exited the first round of the tournament for the second consecutive year. For North Carolina, that is not good enough. Mm-hmm. And I know that, as we've touched on prior, having that connectivity, being in the family with North Carolina is really important, but winning is more important than all of that. And the results just were not good enough. And after VCU upset them, an 11 seed, you saw a visceral reaction from the fan base, Nuno included, and you just felt like this was coming. So unfortunately, yes, I think that they had to go in a different direction and get a fresh voice inside that program.
There's a level of expectation that exists at certain programs, and what this was at North Carolina just wasn't good enough, despite what happened in 2000, his first year at the program, 4 or 5 years ago now, they make it to the national championship title game. Like, there's been a downcline in expectation and performance, the last couple of years that has not met the expectation. To be out of the first round of the tournament in back-to-back years after making it to the Sweet 16 shows that there wasn't the growth that this program expected. And I look at what happened against VCU. Like, VCU is a good program, and in their own right, in March Madness, they're a brand because of what they were in the mid-2000s to what they've been over the last, 10, 15 years. They hadn't won a tournament game, though, since 2016. You have built a 19-point lead on this team, and then you squander it. And a lot of it had to do with some coaching decisions, some timeouts late in the game management. And that's why I don't think you can look at this and say it was a knee-jerk reaction to what happened against VCU last Thursday. It took them 5 days to arrive at this decision, and it feels like the right one because when you're a program that has Duke in your backyard, and yes, you did beat them in February. It was an important win to the program, but this is a team that's been a 1 seed multiple years in a row, a team that's the overall 1 seed this year. Like, you see that, and you see where you are as a program, and that you were obviously a Caleb Wilson injury that affected how the rest of the regular season went. You were a 6 seed, and what happened in the first round, they look at that as their measure of success, of what they want to be, and they know they're not there right now. So I think that a change in direction, maybe going outside the program for the first time in a very long time, is the way that they're leaning.
Well, they're going to have to go outside the program because there's no logical choice to go inside the program right now, if we're going to be honest about this. Are there former North Carolina players, assistant coaches around college basketball in the NBA? Yes, there are. Are there any that would justify the termination of Hubert Davis and the hiring of that specific person? No, there's no obvious person out there that would be inside the family. Pete Thamel on Game Night last night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, weekdays here on ESPN Radio with Q Myers, had this list of potential candidates to replace the now fired Hubert Davis.
Dusty May of Michigan. You have TJ Otzelberger. I'll be with those guys in Chicago this week. I'm sure they'll get asked about this. You have Tommy Lloyd at the University of Arizona. He's obviously, been a dynamite coach in his short tenure there. I think a name that probably won't make the threshold, but has earned a spot in the conversation is Ben McCollum in Iowa. That is, his 4 national championships in D2. It's sort of the Kurt Signetti model that we've seen work so well in football. Perhaps Nate Oates at Alabama. He's obviously, established himself as one of the elite coaches. Grant McCaslin at Texas Tech is obviously a guy who's really one of the most, dynamic young coaches in the country.
Okay, so he gave a list of candidates there. There's also been another name that's floating around. And if they are able to get this name that I'm about to mention, I'm sorry to Hubert Davis, it is definitively the right move. Because right now I'm not sure that it is, honestly. Because it feels like we have to do this because the brand suggests we have to do this, not because it's actually the right move. If they are able to pull off getting a guy that is employed as an NBA coach right now, but is arguably one of the greatest coaches in college that we have ever seen, kudos to North Carolina. And that guy is Billy Donovan. Say what you want about Billy Donovan's career with the Chicago Bulls. No one would have been great with the roster that they have put together, the 39 win every single year, basically, Chicago Bulls. Billy Donovan is not a good college coach. Billy Donovan is an all-time great college coach, from X's and O's to recruiting to the way he carries himself, to his family around him, to his interactions with people. I understand, Courtney, he's in your backyard coaching your hometown team with the Chicago Bulls. I don't care what he does there. If North Carolina is able to pull off Billy Donovan, that is one of the great hires of the last 10 years in college basketball.
Oh, I'd love to see that. I thought you were going to say Brad Stevens.
He's not going anywhere.
Then he said NBA coach, and I was like, okay. We're not thinking.
But, Cora, we got to be logical on this. Brad Stevens is not going to leave the Celtics.
Why not? Why wouldn't Brad Stevens want to go back to college and where he can actually be a coach? Are you saying that he's done with the coaching role?
No, because he turned down your school. He's an Indiana guy that turned down Indiana. If you're going to get back to college and that job, when you're he is Normandale living and breathing. He's Hoosiers, right? Like, that's what he's been. The Butler run, and you're going to turn down IU just to go back for UNC? I don't see that.
And I understand, obviously, the timing of when he could have taken that job and what the program had become at that point. I get it. But North Carolina is the bluest of blue bloods. I wouldn't rule it out. And I think that, but to the bigger picture here, I think not getting somebody that is, there's some great names that he mentioned. Obviously, TJ Otzelberger right now at Iowa State has them on an incredible run in this NCAA tournament. They could make their way to the Final Four. They're that talented. But I don't want to necessarily look at this list of college names, college coaches that are currently coaching, and think that's the right play to go to a place like North Carolina. They need a complete fresh perspective and out-of-the-box thinking here. Now, obviously, Billy Donovan is coached in college. He won 2 national titles at Florida. He went to the Final Four 4 times, 6 SEC championships.